My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is the dinner table, the smell of my father's favorite pot roast, and the sentence that changed everything. Give your brother your room or pack your bags and go. That's what my stepmother Denise said to me, in front of my father, in front of her son Tyler, like she was asking me to pass the salt. Not a request, not a conversation, an ultimatum, delivered between bites of mashed potatoes, as casually as if she owned the air I was breathing. I was 24 years old. I had a job, a car payment, and exactly $412 in my savings account. And I was still living in my childhood bedroom, in the house I grew up in, because rent in this city eats people alive, and because, and this is the part that matters, I never should have needed permission to stay there in the first place. Let me back up. My mother died when I was 16. Cancer, slow and cruel, the kind that takes 18 months to finish what it started. My father, Robert, was destroyed. I watched a strong man fold in on himself like paper. 2 years later, he met Denise at a work conference. She was polished, sympathetic, endlessly patient with his grief, or so it seemed. They married 8 months after they met. I was 18, about to leave for college, so I told myself it wasn't my business who my father loved. Denise came with a son, Tyler, 3 years younger than me, sullen and soft-spoken in a way that always felt performative around adults, and cruel the second they left the room. I tried, in the beginning. I really did. I brought him to my friends' birthday parties. I helped him with algebra homework. I wanted, desperately, for our strange, assembled family to work, because I think some part of me believed that if it worked, it would mean my mother's death hadn't broken everything. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until years later, was that my mother, before she died, had done something quietly brilliant. She'd insisted, during the drafting of my parents' estate documents, that the house be placed in a trust with my name as the primary beneficiary, to be transferred to me outright at 25, in case anything ever happens to your father too, she told him. My father, grieving and trusting, signed it without a second thought. It was buried in a filing cabinet of documents nobody looked at again. My father never told Denise. I don't think he thought it would ever matter. I didn't fully understand it myself until much later. I remembered signing something with a lawyer once when I turned 18, some formality my father waved off as boring adult stuff. I hadn't thought about it in years. So when Denise sat across from me at that dinner table and told me to give up my room for her son, her actual biological son, who was 21, unemployed, and had been between opportunities for the better part of 3 years, she had no idea that she was, technically, asking me to vacate a house that would soon legally be mine. I didn't say any of that at the table. I didn't say anything, actually, for a long moment. My father looked at his plate. That was the worst part. Not her cruelty. I'd absorbed plenty of that over 6 years, but his silence. He just kept eating, like the sentence hadn't been said. Like his daughter hadn't just been told to pack her bags in the house her own mother had died trying to protect for her. Tyler needs a space to focus, Denise continued, filling the silence herself, because she always did. He's starting his business venture soon, and he needs quiet. And honestly, sweetheart, you're 24. Most people your age have moved out already. Tyler didn't even look up from his phone. I said, very calmly, okay. And I finished my dinner, and I went up to my room, and I closed the door, and I sat on my bed, and I didn't cry. I was done crying in that house. I want to tell you that I immediately hatched some brilliant plan. I didn't. What I did was call my mother's old friend Angela, a woman I hadn't spoken to in almost 2 years, because I had a vague, half-formed memory of her being at the lawyer's office the day I signed those papers at 18. She was the one who explained it to me, really explained it, over coffee 2 days later, her face growing more furious with every sentence. Your mother set up an irrevocable trust, she said. The house transfers to you outright on your 25th birthday. Full stop. No exceptions, no signatures needed from your father or anyone else. She made me a co-trustee specifically so nobody could quietly change it later. Angela paused, studying my face. Sweetheart, do you know when your birthday is? I did the math in my head, and something cold and clear settled into my chest. 6 weeks. My 25th birthday was 6 weeks away. I want to be honest with you. My first instinct was to march back into that house and announce it, to watch Denise's smug little dinner table performance collapse in real time. But something stopped me. Some instinct, sharpened maybe by 6 years of watching this woman operate, that told me if I gave her 6 weeks of warning, she would find a way to twist it, delay it, lawyer her way around it, or worse, convince my father to fight me on it. So instead, I did something Denise had never once considered I was capable of. I got quiet, I got patient, and I got organized. I met with Angela again, this time with a real estate attorney she trusted. We confirmed everything. The trust was airtight. My mother really had thought of everything, down to a clause preventing any modification without both trustees' written consent. And Angela had never once agreed to any changes, because nobody had ever asked her. Denise, it turned out, either didn't know the house wasn't fully my father's to control, or, and this is the theory Angela and I came to believe more and more, she knew exactly what was coming, and that dinner table ultimatum wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was a countdown. She wanted me gone before my birthday, so that by the time the trust transferred, I'd already be settled somewhere else, and she could quietly find a way to keep living there, to keep telling herself and everyone else that the house was hers. I started paying closer attention after that. I noticed things I'd let slide for years because I didn't want to be the paranoid stepdaughter looking for reasons to hate her. I noticed that Denise had, over the past year, started referring to the house as my house in conversations with her sister on the phone. I noticed she'd had the kitchen renovated 8 months earlier, an expense my father grumbled about but paid for anyway, and that she'd bragged to a neighbor about finally making this place ours. I noticed that Tyler had already started moving boxes of his belongings into my room's closet before I'd even agreed to anything, like the outcome had never been in question. 6 weeks is a long time to sit at a dinner table across from someone and smile. I didn't move out. I didn't fight with her either. I simply told her, the next morning, that I needed a little time to find a new place, and could Tyler wait 2 or 3 weeks? She was so pleased with herself, so certain she'd won, that she practically glowed. Of course, sweetheart, no rush. We're not monsters. She even hugged me. I let her. During those weeks, I did 3 things quietly and carefully. First, I photographed and documented the entire house, every room, every renovation, every fixture, with timestamps, and I saved every text message and email in which Denise referred to the house as hers, or discussed decisions about it as though she had ownership authority. Angela told me this wasn't strictly necessary legally, since the trust was ironclad, but I wanted it anyway. I wanted the full picture, in case my father needed convincing about what kind of person he'd let run his household for 6 years. Second, I quietly moved my most important belongings, documents, photographs of my mother, jewelry she'd left me, to a storage unit I rented under my own name, so nothing sentimental would be at risk if things turned ugly. Third, and this was the part that took the most courage, I sat down with my father, alone, on a Sunday afternoon while Denise was out. I brought the original trust documents Angela had helped me retrieve copies of. I watched my father's face as he read the paperwork he had signed 7 years earlier in a fog of grief, paperwork he had genuinely, I believe, forgotten the specifics of. "She wanted you to have security," he said quietly, meaning my mother. He looked, in that moment, older than I had ever seen him. I forgot the exact terms. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have remembered. I should have said something at dinner." I told him it wasn't too late to say something now. My 25th birthday fell on a Thursday. I didn't throw a party. I didn't need one. Angela and I met with the attorney that morning, and by noon, the deed transfer was filed, clean and final and completely legal, exactly as my mother had designed it 7 years before her own death, protecting a daughter she wouldn't live to see grow up. I came home that evening for what I told Denise would be one last family dinner before I moved my things out. She'd been almost giddy about it all week, already talking to a contractor about turning my old room into what she called Tyler's studio space. She'd started packing up a few of my old childhood things without asking, boxes stacked in the hallway with a casualness that told me she'd stopped seeing this as my home a long time before that dinner table ultimatum. I sat down. I let her serve the meal. And when she was mid-sentence, saying something bright and breezy about paint colors for the new room, I set a folder on the table between us. "Before we talk about renovations," I said, "I think you should see this." She opened it, still smiling, expecting maybe a moving out timeline. Her smile didn't leave her face right away. It just slowly came apart, the way ice does when you watch it crack instead of hearing it. "This house was never yours to renovate," I said. "It was never yours to threaten me out of. It was my mother's. Then it was held in trust for me. And as of 11 o'clock this morning, it's legally, fully mine. Every renovation you made in a house that belonged to me. Every conversation where you called it our house to your sister, I have the messages if you'd like to see them." My father sat very still. Tyler, for once, looked up from his phone. Denise's voice, when it came, had lost every bit of its dinner table confidence. "Robert," she said, turning to my father, "tell her this is ridiculous. Tell her." "I signed the trust myself," my father said quietly, "years ago. I forgot the details, but I didn't forget that I signed it. It's real, Denise." I watched something in her face rearrange itself completely. The polish, the performance, the sweetness she'd worn like a costume for 6 years, all of it just fell away, and underneath it was something much colder and much more familiar. This was the woman who'd told a grieving 18-year-old girl, indirectly, for years, that she was a guest in her own mother's house. This was the woman who'd sat across a dinner table from me and told me to pack my bags like it cost her nothing. "You planned this," she said, and I actually laughed, because the accusation was almost impressive in its shamelessness. "No," I said, "you planned this. 6 weeks ago. You just didn't know whose house you were trying to take." I didn't scream. I didn't throw her out that night, dramatic as that might have been for a story like this. What I did was calmer, and I think colder, in the way that only truth can be. I told her she was welcome to stay through the end of the month while she and Tyler found somewhere else to live, because I wasn't interested in becoming the version of cruel she'd shown me at that dinner table. But I also told her, very clearly, that the house was mine, the decisions about it were mine, and that the version of our family where she got to hand down ultimatums at my mother's dinner table was over, permanently, starting that night. My father stayed. He and Denise separated 8 months later, not because of the house, not directly, but because once the costume came off, he couldn't unsee what had been underneath it the whole time. The years of subtle proprietary comments, the quiet campaign to make me feel like a guest in my own home, while positioning her own son as the rightful heir to a life he had no legal claim to. Tyler moved out with his mother, and I heard through a cousin, almost a year later, that Denise had told people in her new life a very different version of this story, that her stepdaughter had stolen the house out from under her. I let her have that story. It cost me nothing. What she never understood, sitting at that table telling a 24-year-old girl to pack her bags, was that some things you can't threaten someone out of, because they were never yours to give away in the first place. My mother knew that. She knew it while she was dying, while she still had the strength to sit in a lawyer's office and make sure that even after she was gone, no one, not grief, not a new marriage, not a woman with a sweet smile and a hungry eye for what wasn't hers, could ever again make her daughter feel like she didn't belong in her own home. I still live in that house. I repainted my old bedroom myself, the one Denise wanted to hand over to her son, and some nights I sit on the floor of it with a cup of tea and think about my mother, sitting across from a lawyer 7 years before I'd ever need it, quietly building me a floor to stand on. She never got to see what she protected, but I think, somehow, she knew it would matter.